That book that I was thumbing through, there was nothing new in there. I've heard it all. I've seen it before. However, one thing that impressed me this time, because apparently I was not ready for it at other times when I'd heard it or seen it, but one thing that impressed me was the statement that you are right where I am. And that if I prayed, truly prayed, my prayer would be answered. He said, okay, God, here I go. The man said, God, I need help and I need it now. Please give it to me. That's all he said. That was his prayer. And in an instant, in the twinkling of an eye, that knot disappeared. The man went on to say later on how for him that was a miracle. And how later on, how he moved from hating someone to really loving them. He said that the man he had hated for the past few years because of something that had happened. And how if he could have murdered that guy and gotten away with it, he would have cheerfully done it. He said, except he didn't think he could get away with it. He said, but now, a short time after he had said that prayer, the anger and the hatred towards that man lifted, and it even moved to love. He said for him, that was a miracle, because it moved to a point where he could even pray for God to help that man, to help guide, lead, and direct him to his greater yet to be. He listened. And that's what it takes for each of us to listen. As the master teacher said, for this reason I came. It takes us to bend an attentive ear. It's like that story about this woman was walking along the sidewalk downtown, and all of a sudden she heard this voice, and the voice said, don't take another step. If you do, a brick will fall on top of your head and kill you. She came to an abrupt halt. Within a split second, a brick fell right in front of her, splattered. And she said, wow, who was that? Wherever they aren't here now. So she continued walking. She got to the curb, and she was getting ready to step off into the street, across the street. And that same voice said, don't step out into the street. If you do, a car will run over you and kill you. Stop, stand still. And she obeyed. And a split second afterwards, a car came careening from around the corner and almost hit her. Surely it would have killed her if she had been crossing the street. And the woman said, who are you? Where are you? And the voice said, I am your guardian angel. She said, yeah? Well, where were you when I got married? The power of God. It is a power to be used. It can reach out in a public park by the lake shore as it did for that man. It can touch a hard-bitten, tough, defeated man. And it can give him power and gave him a new life. Whatever your problem, whatever your trouble, whatever your discouragement may be, pray about it. Take it to spirit and follow through by believing in this divine power. Yield yourself to it and start to live differently in accordance with God's will. And you will be lifted from defeat to victory, from weakness to strength, from sadness to joy, from hatred to an overpowering love. The answer, in my opinion, to any difficult situation is to let this divine presence start working in you. No matter how down you may be, no matter how down you may feel, or how low you may have succumbed. The power of faith, the power of a greater awareness and understanding can move you to a feeling of being on top of things. We look at this manger during Christmas time, and some of us will imagine the birth of Jesus the Christ, but the question is always, why was he born? What was the message? Someone did some research and said prior to his being born, there were only 713 laws, rules, codes that a person had to follow in order to be a good person. But after he came, there was only one rule, and that rule rated above all others. That one thing, as it says in 1 Corinthians 13:13, now abide faith, hope, and love. But love is the greatest of these. When we truly love ourselves and love this divine presence, we begin to allow that love to flow through us. Then we are truly divine. Out of Hinduism, one of their sacred books, the Bhagavad Gita, it says, those who realize the self, uppercase self, meaning spirit or God, are always satisfied. Having found the source of joy and fulfillment, they no longer seek happiness from the external world. They have nothing to gain or lose by any action. Neither people nor things can affect their security. I believe the greatest truth of all is that there is a power and there is a presence with you always. As it says in Matthew 28:20, I am with you always. Perhaps the most meaningful fact this holiday and any day is that you are not alone. It is impossible for you to be alone. When this master teacher was born, they named him Emmanuel, simply meaning God is with us. The basic impact of the Christmas message is close by at all times, unseen by the eye, but felt by the heart. There is a tremendous power in this thing we call love. Norman Vincent Peale told the story how he was at O'Hare Airport in Chicago, waiting for the boarding to take place on his flight. And he happened to notice a man walking by, and the man's shoulders were slumped, the head was down, and he said the man was slumbering. He wasn't walking, just kind of dragging along, so you could feel the despair that this man was feeling. And the man happened to look over, and he stopped and said, hey, aren't you Dr. Peale? Dr. Peale said, yes, I am. The man said, listen, I don't have time to stop and talk. I've got to catch this plane. I've got to keep going. But I've got to tell you, I am so discouraged. Do you have any words of all that can help me, that can inspire me to keep going? Dr. Peale said he had no idea as to what to tell the man, so he did a quick prayer, closed his eyes, and he prayed for guidance. And within a second, he said, yes, I do. I have 3 words. God loves you. The man said, yeah, thanks. He turned and started to walk. And Dr. Peale instinctively said, and I love you too. And the man's whole demeanor changed. He straightened up. And he said, you know, I believe you do. And I'm grateful to you for that. A smile came across the man's face. You could feel the energy shift from despair to hope. Our role, practice believing that this presence is with you, and begin believing that nothing can be against you. Any inferiority, any inadequacy will eventually give way to one of confidence, to one of faith, love, joy. Fear and faith are 2 great powers, and both are competing for control of our mind. Never forget, faith is stronger than fear. And I invite you to repeat those words of reassurance throughout the day.